That's all.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
How are we doing today? That's the question we're all asking.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
It's episode 2225 and I feel alive. My name is Mike and I like to dance sometimes when no one's looking, especially not you. Don't look at me dance, stop looking at me. But hey, if you wanna see a video that I do every day, there's a quick little short clip that I do on my YouTube channel and also at Mike's Daily Podcast.
Mike's Daily Podcast.com.
Hey, check it out because I do it. And if you don't watch it, then no one cares and then no one watches.
Mike's
and I don't care
Daily
if you watch it or not. Just
Podcast.
Don't look at me when I dance.
Yeah!
I want to cover a couple of things today. I got to zip through a bunch of stuff. I'm still thinking about the wonderful place where I lived 12 years ago. Huntsville, Alabama. They did have some tornadoes this week. People that had no idea, they've never been to Alabama, but they knew I lived there for a while. They're asking me, oh, how are things over there? Currently, it's 73 degrees. Let's see. We have in Huntsville, Alabama, some road closures following some severe weather storms. That was posted about an hour ago. Colbert County giving away NOAA weather radios, and that's North Alabama emergency, and that's where I live was NOBAM. North Alabama emergency responders remind to get out of mobile homes when severe weather hits. Yes, that's the thing is the mobile homes obviously would take off like the Dorothy's house in Wizard of Oz, but or was it Annie M's house? At any rate, it's not good. And tornadoes are freaky, especially to people that are not from.
And here's today's podcast picture.
Alabama originally. Just like you take an Alabama and bring them to California and they feel an earthquake, they freak out. That's what I found out from the Alabamans that I got to know pretty well. The podcast picture is from Guntersville Lake in Alabama, a beautiful spot. Oh, I missed, I was married then, and my then wife did not like to travel with me much in the latter days of us living in Alabama, and I just wanted to explore because I knew we were leaving. Oh, this is before Basil. We actually, the year we left Alabama, we got Basil towards the end of the beginning of the following year. The late great Basil the boxer, everybody. Let's clap our hands for him because he was the best. All right. In Guntersville Lake. It's a lake that gets fed by the Tennessee River. So a lot of water suddenly stops in the Guntersville Lake, and it's beautiful, it's huge, it's green, all kinds of water activities. And I went there one day. I remember I had coffee. I posted a podcast picture of this coffee place, the coffee house I went to in Arab, which is looks to be about maybe a little less than 10 miles from Guntersville Lake. But there's still a place, there's actually a town called Egypt near Arab in Alabama. Yes, they say Arab, not Arab. Arab. In fact, the guy that drove my car, I put my car on one of those big, trucks that carry about 6 cars or more. I put my car on one of those. That guy drove from Arab, Alabama, all the way to San Leandro, California, and dropped off my car in the middle of Llewellyn, just right there in the middle of the street. And I was freaking out. I'm newly moved to the Bay Area. This is about 12 years ago. Fun times. But in Arab is a cool coffee house that also you could buy canoes and kayaks and stuff. It was all about lake living, and I miss it. I miss it. I really, 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 really at this moment want to go back. Because some stuff happened today where my job did not leave me behind. I wanted to enjoy my weekend. Nope. My job's like, knock, knock, knock. Hey, Mike, you got to do this, this, and this. Ugh. But let me tell you something. If you are at a job and you don't like where it's going, and you don't like, I'm not getting promoted, I'm not going anywhere. Here's a couple of things to remember about moving ahead, and that is learning to become completely irreplaceable, becoming truly essential, indispensable. Well, some bosses say everyone's replaceable, but there is a way of becoming a coveted asset to your company, unique, a unique person that no one wants to let you go. And there are some people that just expect to be promoted. No, you got to become essential, indispensable. First, this is from themuse.com, by the way. I'm pulling this from their website. Connect. The difference between a good employee and a great one is how well you connect with other people. Leverage that. Time spent communicating, interacting, building relationships with your colleagues and clients alike is time well spent. Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Troubleshoot. To be irreplaceable, you need others to see you as irreplaceable. To do this, stand out for being solution-oriented. Not someone who points out or worse, avoids problems. Fix it! Don't be that person that always thinks, that's not my job. That's not my job. Anyone can follow a task list or a job description, but the truly irreplaceable people are the ones who take initiative to troubleshoot and to identify solutions. Ask questions. Find out how every facet of your company, how it all works, how it all operates. You have to. If you don't, you're not gonna. No one's gonna. You know what? I'll just replace you with the next idiot. Says the person that runs the company, who's not really nice, actually. Lastly, it doesn't hurt to have something you're particularly good at, something that you bring to the table no one else does. It doesn't necessarily have to be a skill. As we go outside a cafe anyway, we're bringing you Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcastro Valentino today. It can be a trait or even a personality quirk. Think of it as your superpower. It's the quality you're most proud of, the one thing that makes you stand out and what gives you an edge over everyone else. Altogether, if your goal is to become essential, make sure your plan includes building and maintaining positive relationships, taking the lead on solving the problems others are afraid to, and honing in on your specialty, and of course, being a little human, because you don't want to be replaced by a robot. Thank you, Lily Zhang, for that wonderful bit of inspiration from the Muse, being inspired by the Muse. If you want that article, I'll include it in the show notes. Heck no, I don't include anything in the show notes, and I hate podcasts that say that. If you have any more questions, you can just look at it in the show notes. No, look it up yourself. If you have any, geez, Mike, no, really, it's a podcast. You can rewind it. If you didn't hear me say it's from themuse.com, well, maybe just back it up. Type in irreplaceable in themuse.com, you'll find it. Gosh, I'm not going to include it in the show notes. That's how indispensable this podcast is. Yeah, just want to get that off my chest, because I find in my position, I'm doing a lot of other people's jobs. And I'm thinking, hey, if I had just taken the weekend off, and if I had said Friday, 7:30 at night, good night, cell phone off, not checking emails, there'd be a lot of stuff unraveling in the next 48, 72 hours. Believe me. All right. Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, OMD. If you leave, don't look back. Or my favorite is, I never know, I never know, I never know why you make me wanna cry. No one knows that song. Tesla Girls, Tesla Girls. Yes, they had a plethora of songs. If all you know them for is If You Leave, you need to really get on YouTube, look up Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, OMD, and find out how this band was as essential, as irreplaceable and indispensable as Joy Division and New Order. I said it. In fact, they knew the guys in both bands, and they performed the same places they did. In fact, the lead singer of OMD said he was sitting in the he was in the bar, whatever that place was. Sorry, is it Manchester? The club that all these people used to play. He said, Elvis Costello was standing right in front of me, and I heard somebody say, Keith Moon from The Who just died. And Elvis Costello was right in front of me, he says. That's his memory. Now that club is basically a storage facility for a restaurant. But the guy, the lead singer of Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, and oh, by the way, their first album that had like all those songs. Oh shoot! What's the one I'm trying to think of? The lots of all that was done with keyboards that they basically stole. Not they didn't steal, but they got like they found them as cheaply as possible, like at all secondhand stores and whatnot and hand-me-downs. And they basically took all this equipment and Frankensteined it together to make this music that people weren't hearing anywhere, that they were just exploring the synthesizer world in the late 70s. But what I do want to say is Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, they still tour. There's a recent concert up on YouTube, and the lead singer does the weirdest things with his arms now when he's singing. He's like doing this weird flailing around, not in a Michael Stipe way, but in a very just, I don't get what he's doing. So I hope he's okay. And then I want to say this. Back to my job. Oh, here's one other thing I wanted to discuss before we do that, though, is people, I've known some interesting people in my life that have weird facial expressions. Like you'll talk to them and they just do this weird look at you. Like they don't realize their default listen face is just off. Like their jaw drops, or they have this look at you like they're angry, but they're just listening to you. They have a weird default face. But what's interesting is during this whole coronavirus and the pandemic is that we have masks on that hide some of that goofy expression, the goofy mouth expressions. So maybe it's a good thing. These people that just stare at you like, are you really listening to me? Are you really hearing what I'm saying? You're just like, You kind of look like you don't care much. You'd rather talk to somebody who's a little more animated, like the lead singer of Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. And finally, no, this is not really finally at all, but this is kind of just finally at the end of this little part of the podcast, and that is the other day, somebody said to me that I work with, said, hey, so-and-so, he's a keeper. And I said, yeah, it's a good thing I hired him. And that's a first for me because I don't usually compliment myself. But you've got to compliment yourself. I went out of my way and I then continued. Good thing I hired him. And, hey, by the way, I hired him during a pandemic. And it's not that easy. And it's, I went the extra mile when no one else around here would. And yeah. Compliment yourself. If you're doing all that stuff, by the way, to try and get promoted, becoming irreplaceable, indispensable, Beyonce, truly essential, then You need to tout yourself, tout your achievements. Oh, I did this and this. I mean, don't do it obnoxiously. Don't like call up your boss and say, I did this and I did this and I did it. No, that's a little too much. But you should, some people, so this guy that said, yeah, he's a keeper. He's a broken record person. One of these people that just keep repeating themselves over and over and over. They don't realize that they're saying the same thing. And yes, I like to bring up Basil the Boxer, the late great Basil the Boxer, every podcast. But that's necessary and important. But this guy always brings up, yeah, he was a good find. Yeah, I found him and I hired him. So every time he broken records that, I'm in a broken record, I hired him. Okay, now that we put that out there, outside a cafe anyway, I have a couple of interesting story things I just wanted to throw at you. Itching is contagious. Scientists have proven that itching really can be contagious. In a condition known as itch transmission, researchers have shown that the sensation of an itch can be caught visually in the same way as yawning. They found that simply watching a video of someone else scratching was enough to induce and intensify itching in volunteers. These dermatologists at the Wake Forest University School of Medicine believe that itching becomes contagious because the brain becomes hypersensitive when someone nearby scratches, and so misinterprets any kind of physical sensation on our skin as an itch. Yes, I will have to share that with my lovely lady friend because, well, we recently had a bout with poison oak, and yes, itching was involved. A doctor in Florida recently posted a TikTok video that's had more than 36 million views and shows him pulling a ball of earwax and fungus out of someone's ear. Why do these videos, same thing on YouTube, and you could possibly wind up getting one too from putting things in your ears for too long, like earplugs or AirPods. Really? Oh. That would have been nice had I proofread that, but AirPods cause that? Really? I don't own any, but maybe you're listening to me through the AirPods, so just be aware of that. I don't like AirPods or any kind of ear thingy when I'm walking because that's dangerous, very dangerous. And when I used to walk Basil, when I first got him, I used to listen to, radio, and I was listening to podcasts. This is 2009 when nobody was listening to podcasts yet. And I was starting my podcast. And people would suddenly pop up out of nowhere and I didn't hear them and it would scare me. And, Basil, all of a sudden there's a dog because the other guy is walking a dog and they're barking or whatever. I mean, you don't know what's happening when you put these little things in your ears and you go for a walk. I mean, you lose the perception around you of what's happening, and you should have your eyes open all the time because people could jump you, they could take your wallet, or worse. It's good to know what's going on. And plus, you get to hear the beautiful things like the birds chirping like you hear now. People are selling COVID vaccines on the dark web. You can get one overnighted for $500, and there's no guarantee you're getting the real thing. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. And do you feel strange about hanging out with people again this past year? 39% of people say they do have some uneasy feelings. However, 55% said they don't. If you want to turn off your camera during Zooms, here's a great reason to. It's good for the environment. Video conferencing uses a lot of energy, and a new study found turning off your camera can reduce the amount of energy you use by 96%. Pepsi and Peeps. Yes, Peeps. We're getting close to Easter. So much so I quoted a Bible verse last podcast. Pepsi and Peeps just announced that they've teamed up to make a new soda for Easter. And it's Pepsi, but with a Peeps marshmallow flavor added in. Ew, I'm not a fan of Peeps. You either love them or hate them. You can win a 3-pack in a social media contest they're running. Woohoo. Heinz, you find out more in the show notes. Yeah, right. Heinz just keeps on releasing condiment mashups. They've just announced 2 new ones. Sweet Ketchili, which is a mix of ketchup and sweet Thai chili sauce. And Buffa Ranch, which is buffalo sauce and ranch. The mother from Arrested Development, Jessica Walter, died. Jessica Walter, she was also on Archer. She was on Dinosaurs. She was 80. Also on Grand Prix, Play Misty. She was in Play Misty for me? Wow. Oh, she died in her sleep. By the way, Burgess Meredith, he passed away a long time ago. He's the old guy from Grumpy Old Men that says, you need to, well, he says a bunch of stuff that's really like you would never hear a grandfather say. Very blue, shall we say. There is on YouTube a film he did for World War II where he's like 20, and it's an instructional video for American soldiers going over to England and just telling them things like, hey, the beer in England is warm. Don't ask for ice, they don't have any. And he talks to the camera and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the old guy. So you need to watch that and then go to look up Burgess Meredith, Grumpy Old Men. And there's like a Supercuts reel that's got all the best parts he's ever done. And do not have the kids around when you watch that. But it's a fascinating thing because you see this guy, he had quite a life. He lived his entire life out on film. And just you get an appreciation for someone's life, basically. Maybe someone will have an appreciation for my life listening to all 2,225 podcasts that I've done. A possible toilet paper shortage may be on the horizon because of that shipping container shortage. That same shortage could cause coffee to become scarce. There's a huge demand from Chinese companies that want to ship their goods to North America. Consumers may start stockpiling toilet paper again. Yikes. Staples is laminating COVID vaccination cards for free through May 1st. Just so you know. So it'll last longer. Another coronavirus vaccine scam. The Federal Trade Commission says scam artists are using the coronavirus vaccine to steal people's personal information. They are sending emails and text messages to vaccinated people that read, complete this short 30-second survey about your experience with Moderna COVID-19 vaccine to select one of our exclusive reward offers. Never, ever, ever respond to a text message that you don't know where it came from. Ever. Thank you, Mike. No, it's true. It seems like just redundant and replaceable and dispensable and non-essential. But yes, it is true. People forget that. And there was something else. Oh, our local representative, Eric Swalwell. Yes, he ran for president, and then he dropped out running for president, like before anybody else dropped out. He said that in honor of, he had the honor of presiding over the House's 413-12 vote to award 3 congressional gold medals to the U.S. Capitol Police, the D.C. Metropolitan Police, and other law enforcement officers who responded to the violent insurrection and protected the Capitol on January 6th. I would like to ask, who were the 12 idiots that didn't vote to award the 3 congressional gold medals? That's scary. It just shows you the House of Representatives is 400 plus politicians, some of them very questionable, but that's a lot of wow. And for some reason, there are some politicians that are still, I was musing about this, like if you're a senator, you're in there for a while. If you're a House of Representative, you are not, you have to run for office, basically get reelected. You have the much shorter terms of all the other politicians. So the fact that people like Nancy Pelosi have lasted so long is interesting to me. And then Eric Swalwell, well, he's lasted a while too. not nearly as long as Nancy, but he said he was in the Bay Area to meet up with Dublin Mayor Melissa Hernandez, Vice Mayor Sean Kumaji, and other city officials to check out the city's epic new Imagine Playground. It's the first all-abilities playground in the Tri-Valley, which opened March 6th. It includes, it's for all children, especially and including those with special needs. And then he had the pleasure of meeting the Lieutenant Colonel Serena Johnson, Garrison Commander at the U.S. Army's Park Reserve Forces training area in Dublin. He caught up on what was happening at Camp Parks, a key academic institution, military intelligence facility, and battlefield simulation center that supports military readiness for both the Army Reserve and the entire Joint Force and its relationship with our civilian community. Yes, Camp Parks. So that's Eric Swalwell, 2 years as a representative, a 2-year term. I learned a lot about politics today, didn't you? Why AstraZeneca is getting no thanks for vaccinating millions. The European Union has accused it of delays in supplies while accusing it of making an inferior product. The long-awaited U.S. trials were released this week only to be slapped down hours later by an independent monitoring board. Yeah, my cousin in Germany was saying Germans aren't so happy with AstraZeneca. And finally, this is the real finally, because we were going through all that stuff about the coronavirus and Swalwell and everything. Even if they're not personally acquainted with a pressure cooker, most workers have heard or used the expression to describe a job environment, and with good reason. A pressure cooker is a heavy cooking pot that had widespread use before the microwave, or the Instapot made cooking quick and efficient. When placed on a gas or electric burner, a pressure cooker had the ability to produce and contain both heat and steam pressure. On top of the lid was a stem with a small hole. Over that hole sat a small rounded metal weight, heavy for its size. It too had a small hole, and atop of it was a pop-up relief valve. The relief valve vented excess pressure and heat when the cooker became too hot and highly pressurized. This written by E. Arthur Self, Ph.D., and he says, I always thought a pressure cooker was dangerous and should be avoided. I knew that if the pressure got too high, it was certain to blow up. The pressure cooker provided a quickly prepared, better end product than slow cooking. Yet the pressure relief valve had even greater value, for it provided safety and well-being for those in the kitchen. Having a relief valve to take the pressure off of an employee or group of employees is also necessary in the workplace. Time pressure, which is something I'm starting to feel because, oh my gosh, we've been talking for almost a half hour, is the first element among those that cause a pressure cooker work environment. Time pressure is an insidious stress creator. How many times a day are activities controlled or redirected by the clock? From the time people awaken to the alarm clock or the phone warning, to the end of the day when the alarms are reset, people are subject to time. If, in fact, a leader can give back time that had already been emotionally spent or allocated to other pressing matters, then that leader has, to some degree, relieved the pressure and created time margins. Creating time margins is one of the greatest gifts a leader can give. There you go. Time margins. Fascinating. Hey, we're outside a cafe anyway, somewhere in Podcastro Valley. Look who is here. Hi, Mark. It's Benita the Rodeo Queen. How you doing?
It's a Disgruntled Fiddle Player, tell you what.
What?
I think it's fascinating you talking about time. Time ain't no friend of mine. That's Hootie and the Blowfish, they sing that.
Ah, look who else is here.
Hello, Mark. I make the delicious root beer. How's the weather?
Well, we sure covered a lot of ground today, similar to mud. Mud covers a lot of ground. And And maybe this show is as clear as mud. But anywho, I want to thank you. If you'd like to chime in about anything we covered, you can call me 336MM Daily. That's 3 + 3 = 6. MM as in Mike Matthews, Daily as in what this podcast has been now for several days. And with more on how to contact me, we have A-Frame. Oh, but don't forget, next show, we're going to have the wonderful Madame Rootabega, Valentino, and Bison Bentley. Thank you for listening.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com.
Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com.
See you tomorrow. Bye!